how to make chicken and noodles. Noodles are one of those things that are super easy to make, and it doesn't use very many ingredients at all. I make a recipe that was given to me by my mom, and for every egg that you use, you put in 2 tablespoons of milk, a half a teaspoon of salt, and then about a cup of flour. So I'm just gonna, I did a 3 egg batch is what I'm making. And so I'm just beating that egg, and then I'm gonna add the milk to that. I've already got that measured out for the right proportions of milk and salt. And then I'm going to, oops, I didn't know that out of it. I'm gonna mix that all together with a little spatula, and that way it doesn't get the flour stuck in the tines of the fork. So I'm going to add in my flour 1 cup at a time. And noodles are some of those things that kind of evoke memories, I think. Sometimes we think about eating noodles at grandma's house, or those special holidays that you would have noodles. I know in my husband's family, noodles are one of those things that they eat at Thanksgiving and Christmas. His mom makes wonderful homemade noodles. And it's just, I don't know, wonderful and pleasant. And depending on, where you grew up, your noodles maybe are thinner or thicker. And what makes them special is how your family made them. So you can do the same thing. You can make the noodles however you want to. If you like really thin noodles, you just roll them out thinner. If you like really thicker noodles, just don't roll them out as much. There's no right or wrong way. You just need to make sure that you incorporate that all in there. And then I'm actually going to turn this out onto the counter to keep on mixing it in. Because it really takes a lot of kneading and kind of mixing stuff in there. And then once your noodles are ready to be rolled out, I usually roll mine out and let them sit for about 20 minutes before I cut them into whatever shapes that I want. So for tonight, we're cutting them into thicker shapes for chicken and noodles, but you can roll these out or cut these out really thin to put in chicken noodle soup, or you can make beef and noodles with them. There's a lot of different things you can make, and noodles are super cheap. And most of the time, we have some of these ingredients on hand all the time. And then a lot of times, I take this and divide it out, so I'm not working with a huge chunk at a time. I'll put a little more flour on there, get some of the bigger pieces off, and then just roll that out. Sometimes instead of using this part of the rolling pin, if you just use your hands on that middle part just to kind of get it started, I find that it's easier to kind of get those going. And when I was in high school, I would make homemade chicken noodle soup for my family, and I would make the noodles using this same recipe that would go in our chicken noodle soup. So when I was making it the way my siblings like to eat their noodles. And that's kind of changed over the years. My kids love what some people call chicken and dumplings, which is what I'm making tonight. So once you get that really thin, you'll let this sit for, like I said, about 20 minutes before you cut it up into your pieces. So we'll come back in just a little bit, and then you'll be able to see that next process. Okay, now that we've let these set for about 20 minutes, you can cut them into whatever shapes you want. So we're doing just the random shapes so that we can make the chicken and noodles, but whatever shapes you want to cut yours into, you can cut them into the different shapes. You have to let these set at a minimum of about 20 minutes once they're cut into these shapes before you put them in with your chicken broth. You can make like a double batch and cook part of them now and then dry part of them to use for another meal later in the week or in weeks from now. If you do that, make sure these dry completely before you put them in a Ziploc bag. And then you can put them in the Ziploc bag and just store them in the pantry. So we'll see you soon. Yes. Hi, now that our chicken has cooked down and our noodles are dry enough to go into the broth, I'm taking this cutter and chopping up the chicken into smaller bite-sized pieces. You can do this in multiple ways, but I really like this tool that Pampered Chef has. It just makes it go really fast, and I don't have to pull the chicken out, let it cool, and then cut it and put it back in. I can just do that right there in the pan to have some bite-sized pieces of chicken and with the noodles. And then these noodles have been drying for probably about an hour and a half. And so I've taken some of the noodles from the counter, put them on here so I'm not constantly having to walk back and forth. And then when I put these in, I like to just do a few at a time. I don't like to dump the whole kit and caboodle in at once because they have a tendency to stick together if you do that. So I just kind of layer them in there, and then occasionally I stir it around. Noodles are one of those things that, depending on what part of the country you grow up in, you view noodles differently. Some people might call this chicken and dumplings, but when I was growing up, dumplings were these huge mounds of dough that you used melted butter to top with. And so when I make chicken and noodles for my kids, this is what they refer to chicken and noodles as. They're just kind of these little asymmetrical pieces. This is a great way to get kids involved because after the noodles have dried a little bit, the kids can just take a little butter knife and help you cut these into little pieces. And then I will keep on cooking that until those noodles are completely done. It'll take about 20 to 25 minutes. As a side note, if it is dry out, your noodles will dry a lot faster and it won't take you as long to have to wait for them to dry on the counter before you put them in the pan. If it's a rainy day, it's going to take you a little bit longer. So we'll let those cook. I stir that probably every few minutes because you don't want them to stick together. And then we'll be done with this, and it'll make just a nice supper with this side of veggies and dip. Hi, now that these have been cooking, I'm going to show you the final project. So there is tonight's supper of chicken and noodles. Have a great night.